Thank you, Polly. Fellow Toastmasters and very welcome guests. Self-esteem and self-confidence. You don't have to answer this, but can you relate to a time where you struggled with either of these, whether it's self-confidence or self-esteem? I think we all have, and some of us struggle a little bit more than others. What I'm going to talk about tonight is the differences between the two and some tips for improving them, especially self-esteem. So, self-esteem is about how you accept yourself, your self-worth, how much you value yourself now. And then the second part of it is your self-concept. I've done a lot of learning and using my own experience on this. But self-concept is something I've always been quite good with in terms of thinking I could do that in the future, I could make that. Self-concept's very much about when I make it, that's what I'm going to be. And I'm always really excited. Sometimes a little bit too ambitious, but my self-concept's always been quite good. And in some areas, some of my self-confidence has been quite good. But my self-esteem is something I've always struggled with, in terms of the self-acceptance. And often our self-acceptance stems from a very young age. So how we experience go through our childhood, that can play a big role in it. So I'm just going to share something quite personal from my side. So when I was about 3, now I've got very loving parents and I love my family, but unfortunately I had a baby brother who died when I was about 3. Now, obviously I accept that my parents had to go now, and it was quite an upsetting situation looking back. But at the time, as a 3-year-old, you can't quite process that. Not that I know exactly what I was thinking as a 3-year-old. But from that, I developed certain beliefs that I've only started to realise, and that was feeling I'm not good enough for my parents, or it's my fault. And then I kind of went through school and I was a little bit chubbier and had a bit greasy hair. I sort of worked on myself a lot later, but it was kind of a lot like my friends were more popular than I was. And I didn't have a bad school life, and I've not had a traumatic start to life, but that's just an example of how the beginning of your life can impact on your self-worth and how you perceive yourself. So in the summer I had a bit of a setback and I thought, I'm feeling quite down, but actually I'm quite a confident guy in some areas. So I wanted to do something about it. And I'm very much into my personal growth, as some of you may know. So I started using some of that and what I could do to improve. So my first tip, affirmations. Saying positive things yourself every day. And an affirmation, to be effective, has to be present, it has to be empowering, and has to be true. So you could say something like, I will be a millionaire, which is great, that's a great goal to set. I would perhaps suggest make it a bit more specific. And why you want to do it is always really important. But when you say something that's more present and true now, it's more powerful. So for example, I'm working on myself to be a happier and better version. Saying that to yourself every day is going to create more positivity in your brain. My next tip, leading on from that, is giving yourself compliments. Now, it might sound stupid complimenting yourself every day, going, oh, nice work, Johnny. That's a great bit of work you did. Thanks, man. But actually, it's not stupid because it really does help. And as human beings, we tend to talk to ourselves quite negatively, and that's our brain's way of keeping us safe. It looks out for the negatives and tries to keep us safe. But by talking to yourself positively and giving yourself compliments, it's going to help your self-esteem. The next one is meditation. So meditation allows you to feel more present and more connected to yourself. And that's how I got to how I started experiencing the low self-esteem as a 3-year-old. From my American coach, it's a good exercise she gave to me. And then I kind of sat there and sort of really got to my emotions and feelings and understood where it was coming from. Now, it's really important not to run from your emotions. It's really good to face them and feel them because you can address the root cause. So meditation's a really, really good method for doing that. And when you're more present, you're more productive and you're happier. The next one is compliments from other people. So, when someone says to you, that's a great bit of work, well done. I'm not talking myself again, don't worry. When someone says that to you, there's a tendency to say, oh no, it's nothing, oh so-and-so really. It's almost like a defence mechanism because you don't want something negative to follow. But if you allow that to sink in, it's going to make yourself feel an awful lot better. So that's something I've really started to try and take in, so it can be really effective to try and sink in those compliments. And there's many more tips for self-esteem, but just one more I'm going to finish with. Is self-care. Self-care is not just treating yourself to watching your Netflix series and relaxing. That can be great sometimes and you need that. But it's also about eating the right stuff and exercising, because what you're saying to yourself, and it's a very hard habit to break, I've done a lot of work to try and get it right, but when you're exercising, when you're meditating, when you're eating the right stuff, you're treating yourself with respect, so you're going to feel better. So that is a great way of self-care for yourself. So those are my tips on self-esteem. Moving on to self-confidence. Self-confidence for me is your confidence in a certain area of life. So you might be a good dancer, you might be a good speaker, you might be a good writer, you might be good an athlete. For me, if I go and play a game of football on a Saturday on the Bristol Downs, I'll feel quite confident. Not the best player in the world, but I'm quite confident I can do that after many years of playing football. If you tell me to go and stand up in front of a crowd and sing, I'll do it, but I do know they will leave the room. Seriously, it's terrible. But yeah, your confidence really depends on what situation rather than the generic self-esteem, which is how you feel about yourself across areas of your life. Now, how do you improve your self-confidence? And there's only one way really, and that's to take action. There's a great book, I don't know if anyone's come across it, called The Confidence Gap by Dr. Ross Harris. Okay. Not too many, but a couple of you. So there's a great quote in there and it goes, confident action first, confident feeling second, meaning you can sort yourself up, but you will not get more confidence until you actually take action. Now, if it's too overwhelming, which it can be, just to go from here to here, you sometimes have to break it down into little bits. So if you're going to do a speech in front of your company, you might not feel confident, but you could speak to a small group, or you could speak to your manager, you could speak to a small group, and then do a whole speech to the company. And that's how you take action. But when you take action, you make progress. And then when you make progress, you feel more confident. So to wrap things up, there's differences between self-esteem and confidence, even though they're very similar. Self-esteem's across all your life, and self-confidence is specific areas. So hopefully some of you can take away some of the tips I've given you. There's many more, and I could talk about this subject for a long time, but hopefully that's been of use to you. And thank you very much for listening.